Let's do our weekly update on graphics cards. We're going to talk about the market, prices, as well as what to know about the GPUs that are actually breaking when you play a certain game. Let's get started. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology. Remember to subscribe and smash that like button. They say every time you do, you have a little bit less chance that your GPU is going to spontaneously stop working. So let's do a little recap for the last week, what's been going on. First, let's talk about a topic that really hit the news pretty hard. That's Amazon's New World game, and I did a fuller video on this, was basically breaking RTX 3090s. Now, there were some reports that other GPUs were also affected, even AMD like 6900 XTs, 6800 XTs, a couple of other Nvidia GPUs, but the bulk of GPUs affected in this game just seemed to be the RTX 3090, and one of the primary models that were affected were the EVGA for the Win 3. Now, it's interesting to note here that the for the Win 3 has had a pretty murky history in terms of GPUs just stopping working. I myself had two 3090 EVGA for the Win 3 that I needed to get RMA'd because they just flat out stopped working. Now, this was months ago and had no relation at all to the current game, so it's possible that whatever happened in the game just exposed some type of like a hardware flaw, because in my opinion, I don't think any game or piece of software should be, savage enough to break a GPU like this. The hardware really needs to have its limitations on power, on thermals, whatever it is, it needs to have those smart systems in place, and of course a good physical design. So that's something that we're going to see the result of. They're just now getting sort of these partner cards that were broken. I'm sure they're going to do an analysis and see exactly what the cause was. So that's basically the biggest news that happened during the last week. I will say something else specifically about EVGA. They do have tremendously good support for RMAs, and if you ever have a problem with your GPU. Now, I usually will get EVGA because I actually like the GPU. I have no affiliation with them at all. In fact, the last 3090 that I'm using now is the Kingpin, which I think is definitely one of the coolest 3090s. And like I mentioned, I had the EVGA for the Win 3. Now, their support was terrific. As soon as I had my problems, they replaced the GPU. After I explained to them what happened, they didn't give me any trouble at all. And it also seems like they're replacing the GPUs that were, spontaneously destroyed by the Amazon New World game. There are reports that RMA cards are already shipped out from EVGA, and they're on the way to the customers that had this affected. So that is very good news, and of course it's great publicity for EVGA. Imagine with such a widespread and public issue, not widespread that it's happening to a lot of GPUs, but I mean just widespread in the media. Everybody's talking about it, from the major news outlets to YouTubers. Imagine EVGA, saying, okay, it's not our problem, this or that. It wouldn't have looked good on them, even though we don't know the exact cause. Right away, they accepted the RMAs. That actually happened even a day after everything sort of, came out in the news. So that's certainly, kudos to them. Certainly very impressive, and that gives me more confidence when I buy an EVGA GPU. I'm not sure if the other AIB partners would act this quickly. EVGA, like I mentioned before, does have a pretty good record. For now, they did patch the game, Amazon, so I don't think you should have any issues. But if you do have an RTX 3090, especially for the Win 3, I would definitely be a little more careful with what game you play. I know you spent a lot on the GPU. It's supposed to be the newest one, and it's really crazy that I even have to say that, but it's not the first time that these have absolutely stopped working. So hopefully we find a little bit better actual cause for what's happening so we can patch it or learn to avoid whatever game it is that's going to destroy your GPU. Not a good situation at all. All right, so having said that, let's move on to general GPU news. Now, there's not really too much happening right now in terms of new GPUs being released. Now, there were murmurs before about a possible super variant coming out, in the near future, which I think is a little bit funny because honestly, with all of the shortages and, we just have way too many GPUs than we can really deal with, very close to each other. Look at the 3080, 3080 Ti, and 3090. they're all very close in terms of performance to each other. So in terms of traditional rasterization, I can't imagine a 30 series Super would really bring anything new to the table. The only thing that could possibly affect any type of like a positive outcome with these GPUs would be if they have more VRAM. Now we do see the 12 gigabyte 3080 Ti, has a little bit more than the 3080. Now if a 3080 Super came out and it had maybe 16 or something like that gigabytes of VRAM, would certainly be a little bit awkward because now it's in the middle of 3 GPUs that all perform roughly the same. So I'm not completely sold on the Super series. Like, in the 20 series, we had the Super GPUs and they were incrementally better. They were fine. But now it just feels like we have way too many GPUs already. 3060, 3060 Ti, 3070, 3070 Ti. Where are you going to fit a Super GPU in there? If you bump up the VRAM in any of those, you're going to sort of go on to the next tier. You're going to make GPUs like the 3080 obsolete if you had a 3070 Super. So I'm not too sure if they're going to go that way. And I don't really know if they're going to release the RTX 40 series or the 4000 series for gaming. It may be called the 5000 series. Who knows what they're going to name it. I'm not sure that's going to come on the usual time frame as well. Just because of all of the delays and shortages that we've had recently, I think we're going to see sort of a very delayed release response with those GPUs. After all, usually Nvidia will release a new version of the GPU in order to stay competitive in the market after the new GPUs have already been on the shelves. But as we've seen, they can release almost anything, even regular 3070s, 3060s, and they pretty much are still flying off the shelves. So doesn't really look like there's a need in the market for them unless they have specific needs with the excess dies that they have and the, whatever is left over from manufacturing that they can, maybe put it into a Super GPU or something like that. But that's going to get into a lot more complicated of a subject. And I'm sure they have more than enough to split between 3080s, 3080 Ti, 3090, as well as the other tier GPUs. More interesting will be sort of the lower level GPUs. And that's where we talk about our next topic. Budget GPUs, 6600 XT, maybe a 3050 Ti or 3050. Are these going to be coming? It looks like we've been focusing primarily on the high-end stuff, 3090, 3080 Ti, even 3070s are relatively high-end compared to, a lower tier GPU. I think, of course, they will be coming since Nvidia has to sort of, really fill in that market, but they're going to come at a significantly higher price than I think we were ever expecting. Look at the 6600 XT, $299 probably would have been better since it seems to have pretty much the level of performance of like a 5700 XT, which is going to be a fairly old generation by now. So I think that's going to be some of the bad news. We're going to see all of the entry-level GPUs get bumped up in prices pretty close to what the mid-range and higher-end GPUs used to be. Look, a 3070 should be $499. So a 6600 XT at $399, it doesn't really make that much sense, but realistically a 3070 is usually $600 to $700 even MSRP. So that's certainly pretty crazy. So that's where we get into the last topic of today's video. MSRP and availability. A while back, we mentioned that was definitely a trend in improving prices and improving availability, but it seems like recently we've sort of hit a little bit of a plateau. Prices aren't going down nearly as fast as they went down before. It looks like we had a nice 25% dip, and now it plateaued a little bit. I mean, the cryptocurrency mining hasn't really crashed like people thought. It's still lower than it was before, than the high in May, but it's still kind of going consistently. There hasn't been too much change the last month and a half in terms of people's profitability. So even with increased availability, GPU prices kind of stagnated a little bit for now. They haven't continued to go down nearly as much, but we'll see as we get into the fall, into the end of the year. Maybe prices will continue to go down a little bit more. At least they haven't really gone up for the most part. Some AMD GPUs were kind of going up a little bit, but it really is going to depend on the particular GPU and the availability. So it's still a very sketchy time. We're still far away from getting everything at a good MSRP, and when we eventually reach MSRP, you may not be too happy because that MSRP price is going to be much higher than we would have expected at the end of last year. Alright guys, so this is some of the news that's going on with GPUs during the last week or so. Let me know if you have any insights or questions. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.